Hey everyone, Marcin here again. Welcome back to another episode in our photography business journey. And today we're diving into one of the most common questions I get. How do you pick the right camera and gear without getting overwhelmed? In this video, here's what you'll discover. First, we will break down the key factors to consider when choosing a camera, whether you're buying or renting. Next, we'll talk about some budget-friendly options versus investment pieces so that you can make the best choice for where you are right now. And finally, I'll share a quick guide on how to test out the gear to make sure it fits your style before committing. So think of this as your gear roadmap. Each episode is another piece of the puzzle, and by the end, you'll have a clear picture of what you need to build this photography business. Plus, I've got a resource at the end that summarizes the top camera choices and where to test them out. Let's get started. Today's topic is a big one. It's probably number one question I get from folks when they reach out, because everybody wants to know, and you can probably guess what it is. What camera to buy at the very beginning, or sometimes they upgrade. A lot of folks, there's a lot of actually good percentage of folks are out there where they use cameras already. They bought some sort of a mirrorless or DSLR camera. Usually it's like an entry level, totally fine. And then they want to upgrade. When we think going pro, we automatically think we need an upgrade in equipment. That's not always the case, really depending on kind of where you are on your journey. Don't think that it's immediately like, yes, I want to go pro and start the business. Now I have to upgrade everything that I have in place. That usually, actually, it's counterproductive. People think, it pushes them back and like, oh my God, this is going to cost a lot. So don't be discouraged. I was in the same situation. I didn't have money to spend. I didn't want to put stuff on like too much things on my credit cards. So I was really like diligent in terms of like, what is that I really need to purchase? This is what can wait. And then over time, I was able to just kind of build the inventory of lenses and cameras and other equipment. But last episode, I actually talked about lenses. Not last, but maybe the one before. I've talked about lenses. Today, I wanted to talk about camera, and it's in that order. It's by design in this order because I quite frankly think that lenses are more important than cameras. Cameras change all the time. Lenses, not so much. And if you invest money, I would say be careful more with lenses because they're going to last you for a longer period. You will have them in your inventory for probably longer than your cameras. And that's really it. But cameras, very important to kick you off. I don't have a slide deck. Typically I have some sort of a slide deck. Today I wanted to kind of take you guys through. I can give you a peek sort of here into what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at like different cameras. I wanted to make sure that you understand different levels, different brands, different companies. A lot of folks are confused, and that's something I'm here to provide clarification and make sure that you're not confused. So that's what we're doing today. Cameras. Let me tell you a story. So when I wanted to go pro, for me it was a little different. There's like three groups of people that never did photography and suddenly want to go pro, people that did photography for a long time and suddenly want to go pro. And then there are people that like tried, maybe did a portrait, now they're trying to upgrade or they're trying to figure out like the business portion of it. For me personally, I think I was more like in the first bucket. So yes, I always had like a digital camera around and I was playing around with it, taking pictures, family, friends, birthday parties, obvious stuff. And then, if you don't know the story, we were actually planning our wedding back in 2006 with my wife, and I started looking at like pricing of photographers because we needed to hire one for our wedding. And because it was something I felt comfortable with, I always enjoy doing it. I was looking at pricing and packages, and I'm like, holy crap. You can actually make from like 4 to 6K from an event. Like it just kind of blew my mind because I was thinking about like, getting a tax return, for example, right? Like for me at least, it was a big deal because it was like an extra injection of income beginning of the year. So I was always looking forward to it. And I'm like, are you saying that I can have that injection 10, 20 times a year just by doing this extra thing? And it was kind of nice because it was like a side gig and I could just do it on the side and like I could pick whenever I wanted to do it. So it was super like flexible, and that's really what happened. So I went out and I bought my first camera, and back then it was like entry level DSLR, let's call it. I'll explain what it is later. But I purchased my entry level DSLR. It was Canon for no particular reason. I don't think there are differences. We'll talk about it in a second. But I picked up the Canon. I think it was like 40D at that time, and I was really honest with my clients. I went out there. I said, "Hey, I'm starting out. This is what I'm planning on doing." Because when you introduce that transparency, when you're vulnerable, everybody will understand. Worst case, they'll say no. But in most cases, they will say yes. There are clients, not everybody, but you're going to find clients where they are willing to work with you because they treat it as a free service. Like imagine, I'm a photographer that we have done 17 years, probably 200 plus weddings. And the thing with me is like, let's say I wanted this weekend to take pictures of my family. I actually have to look for somebody. If somebody's reaching out like, hey, can I do it like as just a learning opportunity? And they said, hey, it's $0 or $100 or $200, I would definitely say yes. Like, what do we have to lose? I mean, we still need somebody to hold the camera instead of asking some random dude on a sidewalk or on the beach. I would definitely take advantage of that. So I was transparent with my clients. I bought a camera. I went out, very first shoot. I got home. The whole thing was went pretty well. But we ended up in a location where I was it was like an old theater sort of a setup, and it was not a lot of lighting there. I didn't know how to work my flash really good because I was starting, and they knew it. I said, listen, we're gonna have different opportunities, like different locations. If I mess something up and something doesn't work out, like I still was able to deliver something for them, but it was a huge lesson for me. Because I'm like, oh my God, this camera does not have an ISO range, as I learned later. So it wasn't good for what I was trying to do. Now, if I was in a different position, let's say I wanted to just work with kids and take portraits of kids outside, it wouldn't be a problem. If I wanted to work with controlled lighting and do corporate shoots, it wouldn't be a problem. If I wanted to do families in the controlled lighting or outside, it wouldn't be a problem. But because I was shooting, like I knew that I was going for the event space, I knew that it's an immediate problem. And it was something that needed to be fixed. And I basically ended up selling the camera and just picking up the next one. And it didn't really happen that way. I didn't just go out and like sold and bought a new one. I actually rented for a while. Something we're going to cover today. But just wanted to let you know, like, this is exactly what happened with me. Was it frustrating? A little bit. Like, was it a very quick lesson and painful one? Yeah, because obviously you want to deliver your best work. So, but that's really what happened. And when I went out and started looking at those cameras, I didn't at the beginning understand. A lot of people ask me, they see different pricing, different brands, different functions. It's like so confusing. And the one thing that you guys already know or will learn from me is that I try to uncomplicate things. So I take it apart, I make it as simple as I can, and because I know that even after 17 years of doing this stuff, you are going to end up working with probably 10% of camera functionality. Like to be honest, I have cameras where I have custom menus set up. There's so many features, and they all apply to different styles of photography, different genre of photography. They all serve different reasons, but like I'm focusing on, and I'm not questioning those features. They're all valuable in their own right. All I'm saying is that for what I do, for what I would like to optimize, and for what I would recommend you guys optimize, is what is it that I'm after, and then focus on really what's linked in your camera to that particular shoot, right? To that particular scenario. So that should give you a little bit of like a peace of mind, because you don't have to focus on anything. You don't have to be overwhelmed. Same with like camera controls and things you have to do. Like we're gonna actually dissect it and simplify it so that you don't have to be overwhelmed. Now back to cameras. When I started to look at the different ranges of cameras and pricing, I my initial observation was that there were different levels. Now I know that there's really 3 different levels, and I'm not counting something that you just go and like a point and shoot and buy. Those cameras are, you know, $200, $300, $400. When we talk pro environment, there are, I believe, 3 stages. So you're going to see what I call entry level cameras, pro immediate level cameras. This is where most of us are going to land. And like a super pro commercial grade for like high end shoots when I'm talking about fashion photography, when you're, you know, maybe working with a local dealership and you have the super lighting, awesome cameras, commercial work. It's going to be on billboards. Although we had work that ended up on billboards shooting with pro immediate level, and it's totally fine. But I'm saying this is where you're approaching the super pro level, is really where the cameras are like $5,000-$6,000 per camera body without a lens or anything else. I don't think you have to worry about that category. At least this is not the folks that I'm focusing on. So if you're like thinking super pro level, you're probably in a wrong live session. So entry level, I always say they usually are around $1,000. I'm going to show you an example just to kind of like what's in the market today. And again, today is March 13, 2025. So this may be outdated by the time you're watching, but the concept is still the same. Like the camera model may change. So today, for example, I'll be showing you 5D Mark IV. I don't know if they're discontinuing the model, but you may see Canon 5D Mark V by the time you watch, or 6. Or maybe there's like a, you know, instead of 5D, maybe there's like a 6D or something, whatever. You guys get the point. Like the cameras change, they change the models and they just upgrade them. The numeric values usually change. They add a letter here before or after, but like the rest is kind of the same. And entry level, $1,000. Pro immediate, what I call pro, that's where we stay within that range, is probably between $2,500 to $3,500 range. Those are the cameras that like will cover 90% of the situations, right? Unless we're shooting super commercial stuff. So you'll see examples of that later. The next question I usually get is like, yeah, but do we go with Canon, Nikon, or Sony, right? Guys, we're very tribal, right? We like different football teams. We have different phones. You know, there's going to be a camp of people that love iPhones, and then there's a camp of people that love Android. Same thing with computers. There's like PC people and there are Macintosh people. Again, the question is, can the camera get the job done, right? When we're comparing phones, can you call people from both brands? Yes. Can you access internet from both brands? Yes. Are the little features here and there on both phones a little different? Yes, of course. Are they optimized for different things? Maybe a little bit here and there, right? And the same thing will happen with cameras here. But in terms of taking, again, portraits, family, corporate, event, even when you're doing fashion and product, if you get Canon, Nikon, and Sony all at the same level, let's assume they cost $2,000 per camera body. They will all do the job the same way. So some features may be different, but that's something you would particularly care about. Can I take a Canon, Sony camera or Nikon and just go out with it and make $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 per wedding? Absolutely. There's no difference. There's maybe a slight layout between buttons. Maybe when you press different buttons, they show different menu options, but like fundamentally, it's the same thing. Even when you look at the control knob on top of the camera, like they all have aperture mode, they all have shutter mode, they all have manual mode, they all have auto mode. Like no science. The brands may change things around like just to mess with your head, but essentially fundamentally it's all the same stuff. So don't worry. Pick the one you like. I had a photographer. There was actually a couple of photographers I was following. They happened to at that time do work with Canon. So I figured, okay, I love their work. I see what I'm seeing. I guess I'm going with Canon. There was no particular reason. As I was shooting more, a friend of mine was talking to me about focusing speed. We'll talk about features later, but he was talking about focusing speed, and he's like, you got to try Nikon. And I did. And what was there a slight difference? I believe so. But is it to the point where like I needed to sell my gear and get rid of everything and go Nikon route? No. Do I know people that did? Yes, it's a simple preference, right? Like your brain, it's the confirmation bias. Your brain will talk you into any story that you would like to believe, right? That's not just with cameras. But we know all brands are the same. So just if you have equipment maybe that's Canon at home already, like get that. If Nikon is your thing, do that. If you're hearing about, there's like a lot of people trending talking about Sony cameras because they have great video features, do that, right? So that's it. I'm not gonna recommend anyone in particular. I will always share though, like if I was to buy just for photography only, I would probably look at Nikon next. And if I was thinking about like leveraging my camera for video recordings, I would probably be leaning towards Sony, but I also saw some great stuff from Canon recently, the I believe R6. Could be wrong. You can correct me in comments. But it's like I said, they're all the same thing. Like there's nothing you cannot do with Canon that you cannot with Nikon, and vice versa. So just remember about that. Now, and a lot of people, like I talked about the 3 levels, 1,000, the 2 to 3,000, and then we're talking about like 4 to 6,000. I've seen photographers working with the 4 to 6,000. Like if this range of equipment, you can get there once you're already established and doing photography. And if you can pay off this camera in like 2 or 4 shoots, you can actually over time your accountant will help you with that. But what you can do is just write off the cost of the camera over like 3 years, so it becomes almost non-existent. You just do an event, like one event you dedicate, in like 3-year period to equipment purchases. So you almost don't feel it as much, but it's not something you have to front load yourself and your credit cards. So that's not something you would need to worry about. We focus on function and income generation. We're not trying to impress anybody with an expensive camera we have. I've seen enough of examples of people running around having really no business owning those cameras because they just want to blow money on the thing because they think the camera takes the picture. Like they think that automatically by spending 4 to, from jumping from 2 to 4, the 4,000 camera will do more stuff, and it's, let me tell you, it's not always the case. So what is now important in terms of buying? Because I talk about features and like menu options and just things to consider. And what's really important. So let's talk about, I think I have, I had a list here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think 9 features I wanted to talk to you guys about. And let's start with focus speed. So I already mentioned when a friend of mine mentioned to me focus speed, Nikon camera, basically, and I'll use examples just so you guys can visualize and understand what I'm talking about. Camera speed, like the way they focus. Let's say you're photographing a kid and he's running around, or you have a bride coming your way, or you have a group of people and they tend to move around a lot, right? For the camera to like point at your subject and depress the shutter, at that moment the camera is doing all the focusing. And it's important, especially in a moment like bride walking towards you when you don't have a lot of time. You can't really repeat it a lot of times. You can tell her, hey, listen, I didn't focus, go back and just walk again, right? So focusing speed is essential at that point. Something that Nikon allegedly now at this point, I know Canon got better because cameras improve over time. So at one point, Nikon was doing it better than Canon. I was shooting most of my life with Canon. Did I run into problems? Sometimes in lower lighting situations, I would have the issue. But because I would always overshoot, meaning, if she's walking down the aisle or if the kid is running around, I wouldn't just take 1, 2 pictures hoping for the best. I would take, 10 or 15 pictures and then just pick the one and focus. Obviously, you want to do less work in post-production, so that's why you should be focusing on intentional statement. You should be focusing on the focusing speed. So that's number one. Is there like a one that's an outstanding one right now? I'll say no. For the purposes, hey guys, pausing here for a quick second. If you're curious about where you stand on your photography journey in this process of building this business, we've created a quick assessment to help you identify your strengths and areas for growth. just click on the link in the description or follow the link on the screen, take the assessment, and get your personalized insights to help you move forward. Let's go back to the purposes. If you, on paper, I'm sure there's somebody that can prove it and say, this one is faster than this one. I'm talking in the practical terms, when you're on location, doing, again, you know, the categories of photography that I always talk about, doesn't matter, I'll say no. So ISO range, not a worry at this point. 17 years ago, it was still a problem. This is the time when we still had like film, and then the digital kind of started to take off, and like photographers always would anchor against the ISO, and well, there's grain, you can't go this, you can't do that, you can't do long exposure. I think it's fair to say at this point, ISO range is non-existent. So you shouldn't be listening to any advice, especially from those that do not professionally photograph. And there is really the concept behind ISO range is that when you crank it up, when you want more artificial lighting, and we'll talk about what that is later, but if you want to if you would like to add more light to your brightness to your photos, you crank up ISO range. And the problem before was that if you would crank it up in your pictures, if you would zoom in, you would see like little grain all over the picture, because it's your camera artificially is trying to add some extra pixels in there. So something that that we needed to worry about before. ISO ranges, that problem is solved. They go super high right now. So even if you are in a darker situation, like cameras right now can see at night. I mean, you know, it's funny, but like even your iPhone, when you're outside and it's like almost pitch black, it'll do its job and adjust and just do the work. Most of it is artificial, but with the mirrorless DSLR cameras, you can crank it up high and you're not going to see as much noise as you used to. So the problem is almost non-existent. Again, across the board, all cameras are doing the same, you know, fantastic job. Next one is multiple card slots. What does that mean? So when you open up your camera, the entry-level cameras, depending on models, companies start to like introduce the dual camera, the dual slot, the dual memory card slot functionality into their other models. So just look before you buy. Why is it important? So typically when you have a camera entry level, you open the side compartment and you put the memory card in, and that's not a problem, right? For when you're doing family or little portraits, most likely not a problem, because you can take it out. Even if there's a problem with the card, you can take it out, you can put another one in, and then just repeat the photo. With weddings, when you're just gunning and moving fast and moving from location to location, having that second camera that shoots maybe in a different format. I'm not going to get into the JPEG RAW comparison yet, but having one card being your primary card and the other card just sort of sits there. Maybe you're saving, so you're basically saving your photos, your files to two cards at the same time. Why is that important? Because sometimes when you're switching cards, you may lose a card. I was personally on a shoot one time in 17 years, not a big deal, maybe. But I was in a situation where one of the photographers was switching cards. He was on the go, and he basically pulled out a memory card, put it in the pocket, put the new card in, and didn't realize, but when he was grabbing something from the pocket, his card fell out, and the car ran over that card. Luckily, two cards in the camera, so he was able to recover. There was no issue. Client never knew. But I personally also had a situation one time when I went and we were I believe doing an engagement session in Rhode Island. And I remember also same deal. I was switching cameras, and I finished the shoot. I was on my way to the car, and I was looking for change or something because I wanted to stop and get something to eat. I had two cards in my pocket, and one of them fell out. I got to the car. I'm like, I only have two cards, and I started with three. Almost had a heart attack, but I had to go back. Like it wasn't at night, but it was evening. And had to kind of trace my way back to where I was. Luckily found the card. So I was really, really lucky. Even the client, I told him after we had everything completed, I said, here's what happened. It was kind of like, oh my God, like really, you didn't say anything? I'm like, well, I didn't want to, freak you out. But that's really what happened there. So having that second card always gives you like a little bit of a buffer, right? Because there's always this second spot where the images are being saved. So that's just something to remember. I remember after that time when it happened to me, I actually bought like a card holder thing, little baggy pocket socket thing where I would attach to my belt and I would save my cards there. So there's no chance. Don't put your cards in your pockets. I learned the hard way, and not only me. There's instances of photographers. That's why it's important to have the second one if you can. If you don't, just be super careful. The next one is autofocus. This one is this one is not the same as focus, like the focus speed. It's basically cameras are now able to detect faces. It's really nice because it literally takes thinking out of it. You don't have to double check or whatever. I mean, you always have to check, but it's able to detect faces and eyes and focus on, it focuses on subjects really well. Most cameras are doing it, but when you're buying, it's something to consider. So look for that feature as well. Battery life, I'll just say this. Battery life is kind of very similar between the brands. Most cameras, I would only say this. When you're shooting video with photography, you should be concerned more about battery life because video drains your battery. When you're only doing photography, you don't really have to worry about it. If you still think about it, then you can get a battery grip that installs, basically you buy one that's designed for your camera, and it basically connects, it goes into the port where your battery goes, and it gives you an option to add two batteries instead. Is it super critical at the beginning? Not really. Even with weddings, you can probably go by at the very beginning and just not have the camera grip. I like it for multiple reasons because it's more battery life. It's a nice grip when you're flipping the camera because it has the controls and it's just nice. So if you can buy the extension, the battery grip. If not, it's not a big deal. You can start to turn pro without having your battery grip. Weather sealing, just quickly, the higher you go, the more the weather sealing is. What that means is when you're shooting in, like when you go from a cold room to a hot, weather outside, when you're shooting in the rain, the camera, nothing happens. You don't have to worry about it. Like it's usually the kind of like, it's steaming up inside. The higher you go, you don't have to worry about it. But now even with entry level cameras, it's less of a problem. But most cameras will be labeled as like weather sealed, or so, just something to pay attention to. Sensor size, that's a big one. I always say full frame. If you're on a cropped sensor, do it. It's okay. Try to switch as soon as you can. The debate is bigger sensor, more information, bigger images. Can you start with like family and portraits having a crop sensor? Yes, you can. When you call a place or walk into a store, they usually will tell you that's one of the big differences they highlight for you. So just go with the full frame camera, and then make sure that because you have full frame, you'll have to have lenses for a full frame. If you have a cropped sensor, then when you buy your lenses, you just say that you have a cropped sensor. And if you don't know, whenever whatever place you go to, like B&H, for example, online, or Adorama, you have to tell them the model so they can make sure that when you're getting more lenses, additional lenses, that they actually match your camera. Mirrorless versus DSLR. Jesus, I can probably spend 8 hours talking about this one, but I'll say at this point, the difference that you guys have to be aware of is that DSLR, for those of you that don't know, most people already are kind of familiar. DSLR have a mirror inside, so when you're looking through the viewfinder, right, when you put a camera next to your eye, you're actually seeing the reflection through the mirror of what's outside. That mirror goes up whenever you're taking a photo, then comes back down. So it's a mechanical thing. This is mirrorless. That mirror is not there. The lens is actually closer to the sensor, and that's the difference. So the image that you're seeing, it's not the reflection through the mirror. It's actually digital reproduction. So the image goes to the sensor, and then it's being thrown into, it looks like you're looking at reality, but you're not. It's a processed image. I would say the DSLR cameras are rated for 100,000 exposures, which is a couple years of shooting. But if I was getting one right now, I would probably go with a mirrorless. I do still have equipment that's DSLR. We are actually doing a wedding in this weekend in Miami. I shoot with 5D Mark IV for both primary cameras. Then we have backup with like 3s and 2s even, but perfectly fine. Very happy with it, and I wouldn't change for the sake of changing. It's not worth it. So, but we're considering now more like video work for things like this, situation like this. This is 5D Mark IV that you guys are watching me on, and it's perfectly fine. And then also with video, flip up LCD screen. Some people like to use their cameras for like recordings, maybe family stuff. Some cameras have the flip up screen. The higher end cameras usually don't have that. That doesn't mean you still can't control your video. Like I have my 5D Mark IV that doesn't have a flip up screen, but I have the cable connected and I can see you guys on the, well, I can see myself on the monitor here. So you still have ability to like monitor your video in case you're recording. You can actually get one of like external little monitors that you can also connect. So so it's not really a showstopper. I think that's it for the features. I just wanted to say when you're buying your camera, the biggest thing I would like to say is try avoiding buying kits. It's an upsell. You usually get a lens you're not going to use. You're not going to be happy with. Even when there is like a lens, I think Canon, like I've looked recently, it sells 24, 105 or whatever the focal length is. But it's an f4. If you want to talk about the f-stops and why it matters, it's in a lens episode. So I would recommend go there and listen. But the thing is, they usually upsell you something that's not like a high end. And since I always say, focus on your lenses, pay more, like save money and get a better one because they're going to last you for years. We've only upgraded our lenses twice, and we've upgraded cameras maybe 6 times. So so that's just what it is. So when you buy, try to buy body only. I'm just gonna do like a quick shot here. So what you guys are seeing here is a Canon camera RP. It's body only, $799. Doesn't come with a kit or anything. I'm sure if I scroll down, they're gonna do like recommendations. See like those kits with a bunch of stuff, memory cards and lenses. Try to stay away from that. Just buy the body alone. That's something you guys have to remember, and avoid those upsells. I also, when it comes to buying, you don't necessarily have to buy on day one. I would actually recommend that you wait a little bit, because sometimes it's nice to use the camera and just to see if you like it. Even to do a comparison, I would just go back and forth. I would between like Nikon or Sony or Canon. You can rent either one and just go and see how it works for you. But I would just focus on maybe 2 brands and then eventually narrow it down to 1 brand and just stick to one. But my point is, what I wanted to show you here is that I used to, back in the day, I used to use this service, Borrow Lenses. Borrow Lenses actually was acquired by Lens Rentals, which was an alternative to Borrow Lenses back then. But another company, Lens Rentals, you just go to one of those sites. You basically pick, what you're like the assignment. So I'm going to be doing a photography thing. I go to lenses, or you can go by camera with different mounts, the EF and the RF. That's the difference between mirrorless and DSLR. But you can, if I click on cameras, you can basically look at the cameras they have. You can rent it. You can see for the different models. You can probably somewhere here filter by, let's say I wanted to look at DSLR lenses, and they have 5D Mark IV, the camera I have. The camera right now, I don't know, it's $3,000 or $2,500, but it's $104 for 7 days, and you can adjust. You can do it for 3 days, just for the weekend. The way it works is it comes in, you use it, you put it back in a box, you ship it back. It's insured and everything, so so no risk there. But you don't have to swallow that cost out of the gate. You can just rent. So I highly recommend you guys do that because there's not a lot of risk. You want to minimize the risk at the beginning when you're starting. So so that's all for renting. And And then obviously when you rent, you just factor that cost in, right? So if you have an event and you charge, I don't know, at the beginning $1,000, let's say, and that costs $104. I think there's a shipping cost too. Obviously you just calculate it in, and then you charge the client, you pay your thing and for the rental, and then you're good to go. And we got the renting covered. I mentioned the buying or not buying. And what I wanted to show you was, let's just flip here for a second. So we saw this, and here I just wanted to show you, like I was talking about different levels of camera. Entry level at 1,000, and then pro intermediate at a 2,000-3,000 range, and then the super high, which I don't even have here because you really don't have to worry about it. And let me tell you, the more you do it, the more engagements, portraits or weddings you do, at that point you can look at the more expensive equipment, because it's really not going to be a problem. Once you get going with your clients and you have money, income flowing in, then you can pick from the more expensive equipment. So here I just wanted to show you guys, this is Canon RP. So again, I'm talking about entry level cameras, full frame mirrorless, right? They say vlogging, it doesn't really matter, but this is an example, $799. That's what you could expect to pay. Again, body only, no kits. If you look at Nikon Z5, same deal. Look at the price. It's all the same, right? It's all relative because it's an entry level. So you're going to see that as well with like Sony. So I'm comparing. I'm sure there's going to be somebody who's going to point out like, oh, well, this one has more features. Again, I consider this an entry level camera, and that's what you can expect price wise, $1,400. If you look across the brand, Sony has different models. There's probably one that's a little more affordable, and then there's one that's probably a little more affordable, but it's pretty much within the same range. And then you go to Canon 5D Mark IV, which I just mentioned, like those are the cameras I shoot with, $2,000. Again, body only. Nikon, let's look at the price of Nikon. Same deal, $2,000, D850. And again, it's very, as far as features and what the camera is capable of, all the features that I mentioned, very, very, very close. Same thing with Sony Alpha 7 IV, like $2,500. Great camera. And here you can pretty much kind of like see that it's all the same, depending on whether you're entry level somewhere in the middle, or like the super high. I wasn't even pulling up for you guys. Like I said, that's something to worry about later. And then the one thing I also didn't kind of talk about here is you can buy, you can rent, and you can also, I talk about eBay a lot. I did mention that when I was talking about lenses. And just one thing to remember, you basically have to just be careful. Like when you're buying, make sure somebody has a lot of reviews. One thing to remember is do not buy on price alone. Sometimes you're gonna, there's a lot of scams online, and when you're seeing something that looks too good to be true, probably not something you should be considering. So just remember about that. But I buy a lot of my equipment used when I wanted to. I think my 7200 Canon, those are pretty like relatively expensive lenses, at like $1,700-1,800, close to 2,000. Everything from eBay. I just look and person has 100 reviews, looks like they've been selling equipment, they have equipment already listed. I usually send them a message, have a conversation. If it's really something, I never had to call a person. It's usually just an exchange of messages. And like I said, so far so good. So I recommend it? I do, because if you're one of the cameras, actually, we were doing a wedding. One of the cameras needed to be sent out for service because the shutter, the wheel broke, started to get loose or something, and I needed the camera immediately. Went to eBay, bought a 5D Mark IV for $1,000. Perfect camera. I just looked at the shutter count, which is like how many times did somebody take the photo, because it's a mirror. Again, it's mechanic. It's rated for a certain number of exposures. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I love sharing this information with you for free. And the best way you can support me is by subscribing to the channel, obviously, or liking the video or leaving a comment below. Your support means the world to me. And if you have enjoyed the content, make sure to check out the next video suggested on the screen. See you there.